Hello, everybody. Welcome back again. I am now sitting in here with Mohammed Masin. How are you, Mohammed?
I'm doing great, Brian. Thank you. And how are you?
I am also doing great. Thank you for asking. And Mohammed is going to be talking to us about building a WooCommerce mobile app using React Native. He has shared with me his slides and his code and his really cool stuff. I mentioned that, I think, in the opening remarks. He reached out to me right after WordSesh, like, hey, is this something that would be interesting? And I said, yes, it is. And we went back and forth about like the right amount of detail to share with all of you without melting your brains. And I think he struck just the right balance. If you don't know Mohammed, he is the founder and lead developer at Lackadive.io, where he gets to build cool stuff like what he's showing off today all the time. He's also an author at Smashing Magazine, where he's also written an article about this and some other cool things. So you should check those out, but not right now, because right now you need to check out what he's about to share with you here. So I'm going to get out of his way and let him jump straight in to building a mobile app using React Native for WooCommerce. Mohammed, thank you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Brian. Hello, folks. Thank you for having me. The presentation is about creating a WooCommerce mobile app with React Native. Firstly, a bit about me. I am Mohammed Mohsin, and I come from Colombo, Sri Lanka. I'm the co-founder of Lackadive.io, where I work as the lead developer. I write JavaScript, React.js, and the WordPress code on a daily basis. I also write about React and WordPress on Smashing Magazine and on my blog. Feel free to find me on Twitter and GitHub. Moving on. 3 years ago, I started developing Android apps. So back then, what I realized was mobile development is not similar to web development. I thought mobile development is something else altogether. This year, when I got into React Native, I soon realized web developers can also write mobile applications. So that's what I'm talking about in this talk. So this app that I'm going to be showing to you is built with React Native, and it is an e-commerce app. So it pulls in the data from WooCommerce REST API and displays it in the app. And this app is cross-platform, so it runs on iOS and Android. And it also has a shopping cart built with React's Context API, the new one. Firstly, what is React? Brian told me that the audience already know about React, so I'll be going through this real quick. So React is an open source library, JavaScript library built by Facebook. And it helps you to do one thing. It helps you to build user interfaces. React is declarative, just like HTML, and the React components are composable and reusable. So with React, you will be writing HTML, or rather JSX, within your JavaScript. It is different from how you write normal jQuery or other libraries. And React also has the virtual DOM, which will help you to write increasingly performant code. That's a bit about React. And React Native, before that, so this is a quote by one of the earliest developers of Unix. He said, write programs that do one thing and do it well. I believe React does one thing, which is the user interfaces, and does that really well. Now, React Native is, like I said, aimed for web developers who want to get into mobile development. So you're able to build truly native apps for iOS and Android. So it's a big promise by the team at Facebook that with React Native, you learn once and write anywhere. And you're able to build your applications with your favorite programming language, which is JavaScript. And because of React Native, you have native performance and native look and feel, just like if you built it with Swift or with Java. And also it has MIT license, thank God. Some of the features of React Native. So React Native uses components that are mapped to the native counterparts. So if you take an image component, it is actually mapped to the image component in Swift and to Java. With React Native, you have Flexbox, CSS Flexbox for styling the layout. And with React Native, you can also tap into native code with Swift or with Java when you need it. And you can also write pull in libraries from the NPM modules like Axios or Redux into your React Native application, because it is just like React. And it has live reloading and hot reloading, just like Create React app has. So this is a stark contrast from when you write native application, where it will take several minutes to build your application and then transfer it to your emulator, simulator, or your mobile phone. So this is very instant, the feedback. So React Native also has props, states, and lifecycle hooks. React Native perfect? Not exactly, since all the components are not yet mapped. Some of the components are still being worked on. And CSS can be used, but not all the CSS properties are working at the moment. And React Native is rapidly evolving. So 6 months from now, it will probably look very different, but hopefully it will be backwards compatible. Moving on. So this is a basic component in React. So I'm sure you're aware of it, but just for information, you import React in at the top, and then you define the component, which will extend React.component. And every React component needs to have a render method, which is compulsory, and it will return JSX for you. It looks like HTML. And then you export the component at the end of the day, another line. So similar to that, a React Native component, so import React, and then we have something called a view. So you have to notice that React Native will not allow you to write HTML tags like div or img or span or p. Instead, you will have React Native components like view. View is used just like a div would be used, and we would have text instead of p or span, or we can have image instead of img. So view hello world, meaning div hello world, and you export the component. So if you look at the popularity of React Native, it was released in 2015, and ever since it has become more and more popular, and it has surpassed iOS and Android in terms of Google Search Analytics. So who is using React Native? So React Native is being used by many companies, and it was founded by Facebook, and Facebook uses it for their own app and also for Instagram. And Skype uses React Native for their mobile app. Uber uses React Native for their Uber Eats app. And we also have many other users like Tesla and SoundCloud, Bloomberg, Discord, and many other users. So the future of React Native looks very bright, actually. So you're able to write a React component, which will, at the moment, be compiled to iOS and Android. Both Microsoft and Samsung has heavily invested in React Native to be able to make it run on Windows and their OS Tizen. And React Native is also being worked on to actually port it on to macOS and even the web. So it's being still worked on. So I don't think WooCommerce needs an introduction to this audience. So I just want to mention that WooCommerce introduced REST API even before REST API was baked into WordPress's core. So you can follow these two links to learn more about the WooCommerce REST API. So let's get into code now. So I have already set this up. I have already set up a site at WooCommerce2.onitsway.com. I have installed WordPress. I've installed WooCommerce plugin. And it also has to have SSL. So it has to be an HTTPS endpoint for us to query from the WooCommerce REST API. So afterwards, I followed the import wizard to import the sample products from WooCommerce. So I'll just show it to you, the website. So this is the website that I have set it up, WooCommerce2.onitsway.com. So if I head over to /shop, So you will see the sample products that are being shown here. Then WooCommerce settings, and I have to generate an API key that will be used. So I have to go to the dashboard and go to WooCommerce settings. I head over to API and keys and apps. So it has already generated a set of consumer key and consumer secret. So if I want to generate a new key, so I add key and give it a name. Generate API key, and it will give you a consumer key and a consumer secret, which you will have to use in your application. And how do you query from the WooCommerce REST API? So you head over to WP JSON WC v2 v2, and it will give you the v2, and this will give you v2 and products, and then I have to have the consumer key and also the consumer secret. It will display to me all the products that are there inside this endpoint. So you can see the ID and the name hoodie, or the name V-neck t-shirt, and the description in HTML, and the price, and also the image. So if I go to this link, I'll be shown the image. So that is the site that I have set up, WooCommerce.onitsway.com, that we'll be using to fetch the products. So I will be using the context API, the React's new API, which was released in React 16.3. So with that, you can pass down data without using props. So context has a central state. So you can use the central state in multiple screens or components. And it has 3 different APIs. So create context is used to initialize that context with the initial set of data. And provider is a component which is used to set data and also to update the data inside this context. And consumer is used to use the context data. So starting a React Native project is fairly straightforward. There are actually 2 ways to start a React Native project. One is the Expo CLI or the React Native CLI. Expo CLI does the heavy lifting for you, such as icons, for example, or you don't have to have Xcode or Android SDK and Android Studio. You can have a phone and the Expo app on it, and you can just get started with it. In this example, I will be using an iOS simulator to run the application. So Expo init, and then I have to select tabs because I'll be using tabs to generate the project. So let's get into that. Let me open up the terminal. Desktop, projects, and I hope you can see my screen. So I have already done npm install minus globally. I have already globally installed Expo CLI, so I won't be wasting some time to install this again. I'll just get into Expo init WooSesh store. This will ask me to choose a template. Blank template. The blank project template includes the minimum dependencies to run an empty root component. The tab navigation project template includes several example screens. So I will be selecting the tabs navigation template because we'll be using those screens and renaming them for our need. So we have to cd into WooSesh store and Expo start. cd WooSesh store. I'll open the code here and I'll say Expo start. I have already set up an iOS simulator, so which will probably run the code here. So I have to click on Run on iOS Simulator, attempting to open a simulator. So as you can see, it's opening up the application in the simulator. So 47%. I'll get into the code meanwhile. So if you look at the it has this structure. So you have a package file, JSON file, and the entry point here is the app.js file. So if you go to the app.js file, I'll make it full screen. So it has a bunch of code here. So what will be important here is the render method. So inside the render method, you have if not loading, you show this. While it's loading, you show this. Once it's loaded, you show this screen. So this section has the app navigator running. So when you look at the app navigator inside, so if you look up, it goes to navigation, app navigator. So navigation, app navigator. So it has a switch navigator from React navigation. The switch navigator is used to switch between the authentication and the main screen. So login screen and the main screen. Since we don't have a login screen, we'll be using the main screen. Main screen calls the main tab navigator. So the main tab navigator so has a bunch of code here. So the home stack is used to describe the home tab and the link stack and the settings stack. So I'll be showing to you now. So this is the code. So the home stack is this, and it has a basic template boilerplate code. And this is the links tab, and this is the tabs tab. So they have 3 tabs. So what I'll be doing here is replacing home with having home here, and links will become a list of products, and settings would become our cart. So let me quickly change the names. So let home be home, and I'll just change the icon to home. And let me change links to products. Let me change settings to cart. If I change here, I also have to change the screens. You can see the home and products and cart. It has changed in the tabs. So let me change the icons real quick. I'll change this to list. I'll change this to cart. Products and cart. So let me change the home content now, home screen, and I'm going to be replacing all of this with some images. What this does is, it requires the WooSesh logo here, and before that I have to add the WooSesh logo inside the asset. So I'll quickly do that. That's why it's not working here. Okay, so I'll just show the code here. So it has the WooSesh logo on top, and the horizontal scroll view with paging enabled. So this has a bunch of images which is from this website that I showed before. And first of all, it has a t-shirt and a polo and a cap and a sunglass. So it is a horizontal image slider. And this button will take you to the products page. I'll show what the products page is. Products page is the product screen, this. So at the moment, it shows some boilerplate text. So we'll be editing this now. So this is the slider, horizontal slider of images. And if I click on this, it will take me to this screen. So that is the home screen. Now I'll be showing to you the product screen, which will display a list of products here. So before that, I'll just go through the slides that I described here. Okay. So after I initialize the project, I have two dependencies. So one is Axios and the other one is React Native HTML view. So both of these dependencies, one Axios does is it will fetch the products from the WooCommerce REST API, and the React Native HTML view to display HTML tags. Normally, you cannot have HTML tags inside React Native. So if you want to use that, you have to use this library, React Native HTML view. So let me quickly install those two libraries. npm install --save Axios React Native HTML view. So after these two libraries are installed, so we look at the home screen. So we built already the home screen. A home screen has a simple image slider and also a button which will take you to the products page. So the products page looks like this. So it uses a React Native flat list. So a flat list is a way to present a list of items in React Native. So you can use maps, but the recommended way is to use flat list in React Native. And it has a CSS flexbox to style it and display it correctly. So the data for this page is fetched from woocommerce.com/wp-json wcv2 products. And you supply the consumer key and the consumer secret. For some reason, npm is removing all the packages when I install, so I'll install it again. So next page would be the single. If you click on any one of these products, it will take you to the single product page. So this single product has description about this product, the item and the quantity count, which is maintained in state, local state. And it also has an add to cart button. When you click on this add to cart, it will add to the cart, which is the context API. And when you click on this card tab, it will take you to the cart page. So the cart page has the list of items that are inside the cart. And you can also remove the items from the cart, which will remove it from the context. So now let's get into building the app. So npm is installing the modules. I'll go ahead and build the products page. So the products page is this. So I'm going to be removing this, changing this to products. Removing this. And since we can save some time, I'll be copying the code from my GitHub project. Product screen. And after I copy, I'll explain the code. So this, what it does is, it imports some components from the Woo API, which is inside constants. So let me quickly create that. Constants, new file, API.js. So this constant file has details about the endpoint here, WooCommerce endpoint, and the consumer key, and the consumer secret. So the Woo API is that. So this screen, the product screen, imports the Woo API, and before that it installs imports Axios. So it imports the Woo API and it fetches the products. So on component real mode, fetch products is called. So the fetch products will call it from the Woo API.url.wc, which is this endpoint, and to feed in the consumer key and the consumer secret. So it will fetch from this endpoint and it will set to the state. You can see here, it will set to the state. The initial state will be an empty array. So if you look at the render method, it has a scroll view, which is similar to a div. So if the length, if there is items, it will display a flat list. Otherwise, it will display a loading image. So the flat list will has 2 items per column, number of 2 columns per row, and the data is from this state, this.state.products. And key extractor is used to extract a unique key, which is got from the item's ID, each individual item's ID. And on render item will be called the render item method. So the render item is the one which actually renders each of the individual items. So it is a touchable opacity, similar to clickable. It's touchable means it's clickable. So on press, it will take you to the single product page with passing the product as the item. And this has an image and also has a text, which is the name. These are coming from the WooCommerce data. Let me see whether it's installed. Okay. Okay, export start. So let me run it on simulator. This is a new splash screen that I built and pasted it. That's why the splash screen is working now. So if you click on the shop page, so the cart loading icon that I showed you here, and these items that I have done pulled in from the WooCommerce endpoint and showed here. Next, we'll be building the single product page. So if you click on any one of these items, it will take you to the single product screen. That's what we'll be building now. So let me quickly go to code now. Let me create a new screen called single product screen. And this screen so uses a card context. So I have to create a card context now. New folder, first of all, a folder. And a new file. Card context.js. So the card context is a React context, and we are feeding items to it, and add item and remove item. Items means the items inside the cart. Add item means the adding function, and remove item means the removing function, items from the cart. The body will be written actually inside the app.js file. I'll be showing that real quick. Before that, let me go to the single product screen. And so you have the title, which is coming from navigation. So navigation means actually it's coming from React navigation. And inside navigation, you have the product name. So the product name will be displayed as the title here. So this has the local state in it, which is the current item. So the current item is actually coming from the selected item, and the quantity is 1 initially. So when you click on the plus button, it will call the increased quantity. And when you click on the minus button, it will call the decreased quantity functions respectively. So if you look at the increased quantity, it does a this.set state, it gets the current state and returns the current item as the current state of current item and increases the quantity by 1. And decreased quantity, so if it's less than 0, it will return false. So otherwise, it will decrease the quantity by 1. And next we have an input, text input on change text. When you change the text, it will take the quantity and call the change quantity function. The change quantity function sets state, it gets the current item, and it sets the quantity when you type in. So that's how the quantity changes. So let's add that item into the screen first. Single product. Single product screen. So when you go to the home screen and the product screen, and if you click on any one of the items, it will take you to the single product screen. So the polo here is coming from the selected item. So when you select the polo, it will take you to the selected item, and from there it will give you the title and all the details that are there. So the decrease quantity will not work if it's 1 already. Increase will work, and decrease. And if you click on this, you can enter the item here, 3. So when you click on add to cart, it has to add to the context. So it will not work yet because I have not built it yet. So first of all, I'll create the default context inside the app screen, the main screen. Inside app.js, I have a few functions. So items is the cart items here. Inside state, it is here. And on add item and on remove item. So if you look at the provider, so cart context dot provider. Cart context is imported from context and cart context. And if you look at the provider, it has values. So values is a function value you have to pass to the context. So it has items. So items is coming from this.state.items, which is this. Items is coming from here. The initial is an empty array. And add item is a function which will call on add item. Remove item will call on remove item. So on add item looks like this. It sets the state, it gets the current state, and if it exists, it will set it as true, the flag is a true, and it will return the current item, and it will increase the quantity in the cart, quantity of that item if it already exists. So if it exists, it will return the state. Otherwise, it will add a new item. So this is basically the function for adding an item to the cart. And this is the function that I wrote for removing an item from the cart. So it uses a filter here to filter out the item that we want to remove. So now I'm going to be building the cart page. So at the moment it shows some boilerplate text. So let me build the cart page quick. If you look at the cart, it imports React and the icon, and it also has the cart context. So here it will be the cart consumer. So cart context and the consumer. So because we are using the actual item here, we are using the cart item here. So this cart is actually the value that we set in the application screen. So this value has items, add item, and remove item. Similarly, if you go to the cart screen, this cart is actually that values. So value cart.item means the items inside the cart. So if we have cart.items and cart.item.length, so if you do have a cart, items inside the cart, we'll be displaying a flat list here. Items will be a flat list. So we are generating a flat list here. Data is coming from cart.items, and key extractor is getting the extractor to toString, and render item will render the item here. So the view styles.line item. So the styles are actually coming from here. It's CSS in JS. And we have text, which is the cart name. And we have quantity into price. And we have margin left, which is some style. And if you press onPress, it will call the remove item. So which we define, the remove item is being called, which is here. This onRemove item will be called, and it will remove the item from the cart. So otherwise, it will say cart is empty. So let's look at this code. So initially, cart is empty. Let me go to products screen. So let me add a V-neck t-shirt. I'll add 2 t-shirts. And if I go to the cart page, it has the t-shirts here. So let me add one more item. I'll add 12 long sleeve t-shirts, and I'll add a hoodie. and a cap. So you go to the cart page, all these items are displayed in the cart. So you can use the cart page to clear the items. So that's how it uses context to do that. So here also it uses context to add item, context.add item to add items to the cart. So I'll just show that code here. Single product. So here also it uses cart context and cart. You can see here it has cart.add item. So add the current state to the cart, and there we have the remove item, which will remove the item from the cart. So both the functions are being called are these functions, on remove item and on add item, which is inside app.js. So that is the cart page. So that is the application that I wanted to show you. So the home has a slider image, and the products will be a list of products which you can add to cart, and the cart, which will have a list of items inside the cart, where you can remove the item as well. So let me go to my slides now. So this is the cart page. So where to find this project? You can find this project from GitHub, the code I used is actually from here, github.com/store. So a WooCommerce mobile app built with React Native. So these are some screenshots. So you can clone this project to your local repository and seed into the project, npm install and export start, just like I have done. Before that, you need to have expo CLI installed globally on your application, on your machine. You can either run it on iOS simulator or the Android emulator, or even on your phone using the Expo app. And you can take a look at this article that I wrote for Smashing Magazine. So if you search for React Native WordPress, first item is my article. This article I wrote about 6 months ago, and the app that I'm building on this article is different from the app that I built today. So that looks slightly different. So it's a slightly different application, but very similar. So you can read this article as well if you want to get into more details about what I'm doing here. Here I'm using Redux, and on my today's application, I'm using the context API. So it's not very difficult actually. So I encourage you to go ahead and try, and I hope you will have a positive result. So thank you for listening to me. And if you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can reach out to me on Twitter.
That was amazing. Thank you, sir. I know it's always touchy and risky doing live code demos. And unfortunately, due to the nature of live streams, a lot of the code you were writing we talked about this earlier, right? It looked a little pixelated, but I know that it's going to be fine in the recording, and everyone who was chatting, in fact, a lot of people said they could see it just fine. So that's the nature of streaming. Some of us see blocky stuff, some of us don't. But I know the recording has it in crystal clear perfection. And we could at least see the result of the code, and you gave us links for all of the code so we can all explore it ourselves. It was amazing. It was very fun to watch you add, like, well, I'm going to add this complex section, and it's done. Ta-da, and here you can see it working. That was great. We do have a few questions already, and for those of you who have questions and haven't asked them yet and are watching live, do that now so that I can ask them here on your behalf. The first one comes from Marcel, and he was wondering if you could share some pros and cons for working with React Native compared to doing actual native development for iOS and for Android.
Okay, as I see it, the first advantage would be when you are a web developer, so you already know React. So if you already know React, getting to React Native is very easy. And with React Native, you target two platforms, not just one. So if you are an Android developer, you are building Android apps. So if you're an iOS developer, you're building iOS apps. But if you're a React Native developer, you're targeting both iOS and Android. And it is very easy compared to learning specific mobile application development. If you know React, it's very easy. I think those two are the main advantages. And the disadvantage would be you won't be able to build a complex game using React Native. So there are limitations, like it's not truly native as in bare metal. It's not close to the metal, so it's a bit abstracted. So that is the disadvantage. So yeah. And it's very fast to get into development with React Native compared to native development. So it's very easy to get started with it and easy to get going.
I would agree with that. And it's especially easy because you only have to use one thing and you can get, as you were showing in your one diagram, right? Like this will work already for iOS and Android, and in the future, desktop clients as well, which is pretty cool. But like you said, at the cost of perhaps a bulkier or slower experience because it's abstracted and not very close to what's going on. That was good. I don't know why I repeated you. You answered things pretty succinctly. The next question here is from, whoops, scroll right past it. Yvonne, she asks, what would be a good starting point for a newbie whose coding experience stops at PHP, who wants to start learning React?
For that, I would encourage you to take a few online courses. I think BestBoss has a great course on React Native, React actually. BestBoss has a great course, and for beginners, React for beginners. And he also recently released React for advanced React as well. And also you can take Stephen Grider's course on React and React Native on Udemy. So those two are also very good. React is one course and React Native is another course. So Stephen Grider has a few courses. So those two are very good courses, BestBoss and Stephen Grider. I think I would recommend those two places. And also, as always, you can check out the documentation for React and React Native. They are very clean and they are very well documented, and it's easy for anyone to get started using the documentation itself. But as a head start, I think you should also check out the courses that I mentioned. So those two are the
I would second React's rather Wes Boss's React course. I took that one myself and liked it a lot. I haven't taken Stephen Grider's Udemy courses, but I've heard endless good things about them. So yeah, very, very beginner friendly, especially Wes's. Nice. Let's see. Dan was asking, does React Native produce Swift code? Do you know what it compiles out to for iOS?
It compiles to native code, actually. It doesn't compile to Swift, rather, it compiles to native code, bytecode. I think it's compiling to, it's JavaScript, so I think it's compiled to native code. And it runs on the JavaScript thread on the mobile phone.
Well, there you go. It's JavaScript all the way down. Good. Let me see. This one's from Derek. Does the WooCommerce REST API offer every endpoint you would need on a production e-commerce site? Are there any limitations that you've run into? Or would you need to make your own custom endpoints for some of the stuff that you've had to do?
Great question. So it covers, I think, most of the endpoints that you would need for a store to run. However, to manage the cart, it will have to be a plugin or the local state. You have to either manage your cart locally in your application, like I did. It will not be saved in the server. Your cart will not be saved in the server. So the cart items will be local. And so if you want to manage the cart in the server as well, you have to have a plugin for that. There is no endpoint for that. Other than that, the orders, the products, and everything is here. You can use the WooCommerce REST API endpoint.
Very cool. And I did not actually know the answer to that one. I forgot that there's no endpoint for a cart. That's a pretty big deal when you're building an e-commerce site. You need to be able to track that stuff. All right. Deval asks, what do you think about building apps using Flutter instead of React Native? Is it true that Flutter app would be much smaller than React Native because of no need for extra layers? Have you done anything with Flutter?
I actually haven't done anything with Flutter, but I know about Flutter. It's by Google and it's using the Dart language, not JavaScript. So that's one more thing to learn. So if you're a web developer, you already know JavaScript, but you have to learn Dart to learn to program in Flutter. And I also heard that Flutter is closer to Metal than React Native. So it might be faster as well and might be smaller as well, probably. But it's newer than React Native. So maybe the the API is still being built. But I heard that it's more comprehensive compared to React Native. For example, in React Native, there is no navigation. So you have to use React Navigation, which is a third-party library, or any other third-party library for handling navigation or for state management. Whereas Flutter has all of this inbuilt.
Yep. Very good distinction there. Next question from Brad Franklin. Is there a way to convert custom themed projects into React Native apps, or is every element, including third-party plugin functionality, something that needs to be rewritten?
So for anything with React Native, you have to have endpoints. So WooCommerce has the endpoint already. So if you want to extend use the plugins features, that plugin has to have REST API endpoints. So that's about it. If you have the REST API endpoints, you can use it with your React Native application.
There you go.
Or you have to build the REST API.
And to expand on that a bit for you, Brad, yeah, basically you need to write everything yourself. Like in terms of anything that you want to have shown, you're not going to be able to just borrow something that exists in a PHP plugin and have it appear in the custom React Native app that you're making. It's basically a completely different thing that you're building, unfortunately. And then we have one last question here from Nate, and this is perfect because we need to, like, this is the exact right amount of time. Nate asks, how do you handle checkout? Is there a different screen that has to be built? Are there any built-in React Native APIs for that? Because this is going to be pretty different for every store, right? Depending on what gateways they're using and things like that. How do you handle checkout in the app you make?
Yes, good question. So I haven't built that part yet. I haven't built the checkout part yet. So for that, you have to have an endpoint, a payment gateway, which supports REST API probably, so that you can query, send in the payment information and get the payment information back. And like Brian said, it is different from each payment gateway. So I haven't built it yet. So it depends on the project really. You have to customize it for the project. It will be different for each payment gateway and each vendor.
Your easiest win, Nate, is going to be to use Stripe, because Stripe has a native JavaScript implementation, and they send back JSON tokens because they've got the JSON-based REST API. So you build your own custom checkout screen, collect all of the data you would need during checkout, have people pay via Stripe, and then send the token that Stripe returns to you along with the data that the customer gave you to the API from WooCommerce, and everything gets captured there. It's a chore. I don't want to say like, oh yeah, all you got to do is this. Like it's a chore, but
yes,
definitely. Not terrible compared to all of the other stuff that you're already doing to get there. Just one more thing. Well, Mohammed, that was fantastic. I already said that, but I really liked the thing that you built and all of the real code that you brought today. That was awesome. So thank you for all the time you spent preparing for this. I'm going to cut off the questions. I don't see any more.
Thank you, Brian.
Here. No, the pleasure's all ours, my friend. And thank you. So everyone, we're going to jump into the next session here that's supposed to be starting right now, but it's obviously not because we are here in the current session. So I will catch you all in the next room with Daniel, who's going to talk about subscription sites. Mohammed, have an amazing rest of your night. Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.